Hi, it's Bren. We're going to do another episode of Things by Bren. And today we are with David Breakspear. He is actually in England, so we're going to learn a little bit about another country and how their judicial system works. And David has been in and out of prison for many years, but he's turned his life around. He not only is doing things for himself, but he's trying to make a difference. And we're going to hear a little bit about his background, his story, and what's going on that caused this change. So, David, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, your background, and kind of what's going on in your life right now.
Okay. Well, my name's David Breakspear, as you mentioned, and I'm going to be 52 this year. I grew up in a part of England that's on the southeast coast called Kent. If you know where France is, it's where the English Channel kind of cuts through between England and France. So it's on that southeast corner there. Um, Bit of a sleepy seaside town that over the years become more and more deprived as less and less funding was put into the area, and more people were going abroad for their holidays rather than holiday at home. So it was quite a deprived area. As such, I come from quite a large family, and I was really, I suppose, I like to say I was a tie-dyed sheep, not the black sheep, because I have many different kind of facets to me. But I mean, a lot of things happen from an early age. I had a great childhood at home. I can't complain about that too much. I don't think I probably had any different childhood at home than any youngest of six would have. So it had its ups and downs, but as I say, it's part of growing up, part of life. But it was more outside the home where things happened. And at the age of 8, I suffered from a period of sexual abuse from someone outside the family, something I didn't deal with until later on in life. And then not long after that, I contracted meningitis. And was quite ill for an amount of time, which kind of affected. I was only 10, and that affected my sort of younger school years, if you like.
I've had
Um,
meningitis. It's very painful.
yeah, I was going through school for a period of time where it'd be either morning or afternoon. I kind of went back to school very slowly. Not saying that had much of an effect on my schooling. But I ended up going to a school where a senior school, a high school, if you like, from the age of, well, I'm not sure what it is in America. I think it's 10, 11 year, 10, 11 here. But it was year one when it was quite simple. Then every school you went to was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was so much simpler. So yeah, so it was the first year, and it was slap bang in the middle of the council estate. Again, I'm not blaming the school. Although it was a rubbish school, and I'm not just saying that, it was at the top of the worst school charts in the country, I think 2 or 3 years in a row. So it's not anything that people don't know, if you like. So I'm not trying to make up excuses looking back. Um, I didn't conform. I had a lot of issues, obviously, and I began playing up at school, and we're talking about what, 1981, 1982. So what we know now in respect of adverse childhood experiences, the way that trauma gets released, is so much more. We're so much more knowledgeable now than we were then. So there wasn't really a lot to deal with. So it really was um, a labour of challenging and disruptive behaviour, and it was a label that I lived up to. And within no time, from the age of 14, I was excluded from school and very much begun the school to prison pipeline, which is more common than I think society gives it credit for. So yeah, and from there on in, really was just, I suppose, I wouldn't say a career criminal as such, but a lot of my income growing up was from proceeds of crime rather than from a legal salary. I did do legal work from time to time, but I've led a very hazardous zigzag kind of life, I suppose, in and out of prison, as you mentioned, on and off of drugs, on and off of alcohol. Um, Again, I don't want to make excuses, but with the wrong people and in the wrong areas. But I think you attract the people that you want to attract, and you end up being with the people that you want to be with, because you have such a, I suppose, low self-esteem and such low self-worth and value, that I suppose the streets are where you end up. And as I say, it took a long time, but in 2015, I'd finally lost absolutely everything. I was at my final, I suppose, my own personal final rock bottom. And I mentioned to you before we started recording that I had two options. I had three options, and one of those was to carry on with the life I had, which I didn't really fancy. So it wasn't really an option. So it was live or die, and I didn't really want to die. I wanted to live. I knew I had something to give. I knew for a long time in prison, I suppose for the 10 years prior to 2015, whenever I was in prison, I was always doing work that was giving back in respect of the stuff I was doing with other prisoners. I was working for charities in prison. One such charity was Shannon Trust, or our Shannon Trust. And they're a charity who teach prisoners who can read to teach prisoners who can't read to read, or to improve their reading ability.
Mhm.
And I think we very much underrate the power of reading, and how much it allows us to unlock our own imagination. I always say that freedom's a state of mind, and books really do, especially in prison. Books really allow you to kind of
They
drift
do.
off outside those bars. And
They take you
yeah,
out of
of
your
course. And
reality.
who doesn't need an escape from reality? And especially in prison, and also it keeps you away from the illegal substances. Something I've very much fallen.
You mean there's
Yeah,
drugs
of
in
course.
prison?
Yeah, I mean it's rife. Exactly. I mean, a lot of people these days seem to leave prison with habits rather than enter prison with habits. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when I remember being in prison and people used to come in to get off drugs, and now they're leaving
Right.
with habits. They're at their addictions
Yeah.
being maintained rather than not challenged, because obviously it becomes an illness, and it isn't something. It is something that should be maintained in respects of weaning people off. But I don't think it should become so much as a replacement for drugs, which obviously it is, but over long term. So it should be, it needs to be a part of the package. It can't just be a one thing and a one size fits all. It has to be a part of a package that is fit and is suited to the individual.
Right.
The individual is the one that it's important. Those are the ones that want to change. So we should be working from the individual out and not from the out towards the individual. We need to go where they are.
And I
And
think you're right that the individual has to want to change. And if they don't
yeah,
want
of
to change,
course.
it doesn't matter where you put them, in prison,
No,
home,
but then,
rehab. Right.
yeah, I think you can influence that change, Brenda. I think everybody has it in them to change.
I agree.
Um, and I also think that that change can be influenced, but all the while that you're looking around you and you're seeing lack of hope, there's stigma, there's discrimination, you get to the point, what's the point?
Mhm.
What's the point of me changing? So it's about um, it's about distraction techniques, and it's about giving someone a purpose, but it's about giving someone a purpose that fits their talents and ability, not what fits the talent and ability of 62% of the population.
Right.
Again, that's something that we need to. These people have, and myself included, over the years have fallen through the gap for reasons. And that's because what's gone hasn't worked. The education
That's
system
it.
didn't work. Who failed who? We were children. Did the education system fail us, or did we fail the education system? And like I say, we were children. How do we know? And especially back
You're doing
then,
what you're told.
yeah, I mean, it was
Mhm.
very easy. I think it's very easy to label people. rather than to get to know people. Life seems to be
That is a
so
very
busy
true
these
statement.
days. Yeah, life seems to be so busy these days that people look to group or individuals or
Feel like
certain
they into one.
individuals because
Yes.
yeah, and again it's that one size, and I think for too long we've had a one size fits all approach to our solutions in respect of the government, not just in the criminal justice system but in all the systems, in the education system, the health system. It always appears to be this one size fits all approach, and whether
Looking at
that's
the
a
individual.
yeah, whether that approach comes from capitalism or not, I don't know, but it's something that doesn't work. It really does not work. And for me, the best way to get the solutions is to speak to the people that are most impacted. There's no point speaking to the CEO. He's going to tell you everything's wonderful. Speak to the people that are being impacted. And that's where lived experience comes into it. And that's why nowadays I try and utilize my experience in as many areas as possible. Um, One of my goals in prison was to, if you like, be sitting at the top table where policies are being written, where decisions are being made, and to influence those policies and to influence those decisions, not just on my experience, but also on the experience of prison, what I saw, what I experienced through other people, where I've done kind of one-to-one work with other people and what they told me, what families are still talking about now. I mean, I'm very much have my finger on the pulse of what's going on within our criminal justice system here. And that's based on, because of my research, but also based on the work that I do through an organization called Revolving Doors Agency, who are a
Tell us a little
charity
bit
that,
about that.
yeah, we kind of look at the causes of crime. It's trying to stop the revolving door of crisis and crime. And as much as it's been that one size fits all approach, there's also been too much of a balance shifted towards risk management
Right.
rather than meeting needs of individuals. We talk of reducing reoffending. And I think we've spent too long talking of reducing reoffending in respect of, I suppose, protecting the public too much. And rightly so, we should protect the public.
Yes, we
But
should,
I
but
think
we
what,
also need to look at the individual.
yeah, but what
Needs.
the society and what public need to understand is that there's going to be more benefit in helping these people meet their needs outside of custody than what there is putting these people behind bars. Yes, there are some people in. I'm not an abolitionist. I never pretend to be an abolitionist. I think we do need a prison system, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't get the practice right.
I
Yes, we
agree,
need our
and there's some
prisons.
people that need to stay there, absolutely.
Yeah, of
Not
course. I mean,
everybody needs to go.
yeah, you and I have both been in prison, Brenda. We've seen people that no doubt we look at and think, thank God we do have prisons, because you do deserve to be behind bars. But that doesn't mean to say that that individual is not does not have that potential for change either.
Right.
Um, I don't believe people are born evil. I think people either learn it through close proximity, and I mean from the home, from the community. They learn certain behaviours. I think that trauma very um, much as it's not an excuse, because many people have suffered trauma and have not ended up in the criminal justice system. And thank God they haven't, and good luck to them. But that doesn't mean to say it's not going to happen to other people, because unresolved trauma, unfortunately, is released in certain ways. And through me, it was released through anger. Yeah, and that kind of, I ended up me being expelled from school. The anger got worse.
Mhm.
The kind of people I was hanging about with were able to utilize that anger. They were able to utilize that anger at the system, or I was just angry with everybody. So that's where kind of shoplifting soon become armed robbery at a young age.
It
Uh,
evolves.
uh, yeah,
I think you tend to get
stealing.
you get away
Yes,
with something, so you reach out a little bit further.
of course you do. It's like a drug, isn't it? The more you do, the more you want, and the more you want, the more you need, and then it becomes. And this is what happens. And this is again something I'd like society to understand, that once you get trapped in those revolving doors, or once it becomes an addiction, and prison can become an addiction. That's why we have the word
Or a safety net.
institutionalized. Yeah, of course. So, but once that becomes the punishment becomes the reward, prison becomes the drug, if that makes sense. So
Some
that's
people,
what we
that's all
need
they
to
know.
stop.
And
Yeah, of course. And of course, coming out of prison as well, coming out of prison is very difficult. A fellow American of yours, Sheila Bruno,
right.
talks of post
We did
incarceration
an interview
syndrome.
with her with her book, and
She's fantastic.
yes, she is.
Absolutely. I've been fortunate to share a podcast. I was going to say a stage, but a screen with Sheila on a show over here, and I have so much respect for that lady because she really does open people's eyes into it, because
Yeah,
it isn't easy getting out. You don't just leave the emotions of prison at the gate and the feelings of prison's traumatizing or re-traumatizing.
it
It's
does.
also criminogenic.
Right. And then after that, you have what you've just left to a whole new world
Yeah, of
that you
course.
have to learn to adapt in. And people don't understand how hard that can be. It's a mindset. And if you don't have support, you're going right back in.
Yeah, and that's something I realised myself this time. And by that I mean the support of probation as well. Because if you don't have the support of probation, and probation were someone in the past that I've never respected. I didn't hate, I loathed, but I also had a part to play in that. I had my own attitude that I was bringing to the table. So in a way, I can say that I was treated in a way that my attitude dictated. And it's no surprise that the very same people that I once loathed, and no doubt they didn't have much to say about myself, I'm now working alongside in trying to change the system. Because as you say, it's mindset. I've always said that rehabilitation is not a destination. It's not something you achieve. It's an attitude that you take with you. It's an attitude you carry forward. You're
Very well
never
said.
rehabilitated. You're forever rehabilitating, but you don't frame it as that. You just, well, I don't. I just frame it as getting on in life because
And
my
that's what it is,
attitude's changed.
right?
Yeah, I'm
Your attitude, your
rehabilitating every
mindset, and
single
how you
day.
feel about things.
Yeah, every day I wake up in my own bed is a bonus. And every day I wake up in my own in my own bed, I can hit the reset button and start the day again. So
Absolutely.
it's rehabilitation is a daily. It's the same as meditation.
Yeah.
It's all up here. It's mindset.
We have a lot of attorneys, criminal defense attorneys here in America that are trying
Hmm.
to do away with probation. And I
Hmm.
have mixed feelings about it because there's a lot of people that need that supervision. And then there's a lot of people that don't. So I really think, again, instead of everybody being put on something that is uniform for a group of people, I think it should be based on the individual, because there's a lot of people who need that thumb on them to keep them from just going out and doing something again to put them back in jail. But
Yeah,
then there's some that probably can self-supervise. But I think the majority of people honestly need that supervision.
yeah, they do. And let's be honest as well, Brendan, not everybody knows themselves, the individual themselves knows what
Right.
their needs are.
Well, you
And they
don't,
will
because you
need
just come out of everything being taught to you,
ex-
given to you.
exactly.
You don't have to do anything but eat and sleep if you really don't want to.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been I've been quite vociferous against probation in the past. I won't deny that.
I
And
think we
that
all
but
have
that
been.
Yeah, but that was based on my own experiences. And one of those reasons is because I'm always angry because whenever you do, I don't know what you have in America, but here you get put on, let's say for argument's sake, you do 4 years. So you
Mhm.
get 4 years, you do half in jail, and you do half on what's known as a prison license with conditions. Um, Now, probation manage that license and those conditions.
Right?
So if you've gone away for a crime that involves alcohol, drugs, anything to do with your mental health, and you're speaking to a service that has the power, if they get slightly concerned, to send you back to prison, you're not going to tell them what you need them to hear. You're going to tell them what they want to hear. and or what you
Right,
need
because you
them
want
to
to get
hear.
out, or you're
Yeah,
wanting
for
to
you to
begin
stay out of
whatever's
prison.
going
Yeah,
on in
so
the future.
because they manage the risk, they don't meet the need, and some people need people to talk to. They need someone to support them, and probation can provide that. Again, it comes down to the principle and the practice.
Yeah, it's a
You,
little different here in the United States because you do, like in the federal system, you do 85% of your time. In the state, it could be a little less. So you're doing almost all of your sentence,
mm,
and then you've got probation afterwards. So in probation's all over the board. So it's different.
mm,
But at the same time, like I said, some people need that supervision because you have to be accountable.
yeah,
And they're really just trying to make sure you are on the right path. Now, are there good probation officers and bad? Absolutely. Just like there's good correctional officers and bad. But at the same time, if you don't have a good relationship with your probation officer, maybe go above his head and get somebody else or her head. Yeah,
yeah, and that's, yeah. I mean, it can come down to, literally can come down to a personality clash.
absolutely.
And if you're having a personality clash with someone that at a flick of a pen can send you back to prison, it's a very stressful relationship that you have. I've been there myself, Brenda.
And
I've
you
had a
can't be
relationship.
yourself because you're afraid of that.
To be honest, I went back to prison on purpose, to finish my sentence off. So when I got released at the end of my sentence, I didn't have anything to do with them.
And
Um,
that happens here too. If you violate your probation, then you go back in and you basically do your time that
yep.
you would have been on probation. And then when you come out, you're off paper.
Yeah. And there was one that I done a few years back. And you're obviously, while you're doing what we call a recall, um, there are opportunities to get back out on parole. No thanks. um, so, um,
Again,
so
it's the
anyway,
mindset.
yeah.
It's
So
what you're used to.
I had a panel sit 28 days before the end of my sentence. So 28 days before I was going to get out, I had a panel sit. It took 3 weeks for the decision to come through the system. I had a week left, and they told me that they considered me too high risk to release at that stage, and I'm going to have to stay until the end of my sentence.
One more
And
week.
it was one more week. I was like, I don't know if I can handle it, Gov.
Right.
It was just, so it's, I mean, some of the, I suppose, administrative side of the criminal justice system is an absolute joke
It
and
is. The
needs to change.
medical and the
It
mental
doesn't do
aspect.
any,
No, it
yeah,
doesn't.
it doesn't do anyone any favors, and it doesn't allow probation officers to be human.
No,
Um,
it doesn't. But their main concern, and I see it because I have a good relationship with a lot of correctional officers that I was in with, and a lot of it is for safety. It's
yeah,
for safety. It's not necessarily designed for the inmate. It's for the safety of the inmate and the safety of the staff that works the prison, not necessarily your health or your food or anything else, but to make sure that the environment is safe. And that's not always easy to do in a prison.
mm, no, no, not at all. Um, no, I mean, prisons are very unsafe environments. Um, and that's what gets me about a prison recall is that how many years have been spent through recalls for that people have done in prison for crimes that they done. You do half your sentence, so therefore you've served your penance, you've paid your debt back to society, and just because you've had an argument with a probation officer, you've now got to go back and do another 2 years. I
Right.
mean, to me, that does really seem like double jeopardy.
It does.
And as I
And
say, when you've
society
got
treats
that,
us that way too. We're labeled for the rest of our life unless
yeah,
you move to another town that nobody really knows who you are or what you're doing until they go to Google you. Because when they
yeah,
Google you, everything's going to come up. I think
but
20 years ago, it would have been easier to come out of prison and move.
yeah, yeah, it probably was. But if you've got that relationship, or you've got that kind of cloud hanging over the relationship between the individual and probation, then it's quite understandable. Well, for a start, one, probation are there to protect the prison system, probation system, the criminal justice system. Number one, they're there to protect
who they work
this.
for.
Yeah. Then they're there to protect the public.
And
So then you're next. So you're going to go back to prison before anything else. If you even look or smell like you're going to do something, not even doing it, just suspicion can get you sent back to prison.
absolutely, they can.
That's a relationship. Yeah. I mean, you have to be very careful. Or I felt that you have to be very careful what you disclose to your probation officer, because if you tell them something that is linked to perhaps a trigger, your index offense, whatever, it might just be a fleeting thing that you had. But if you haven't got the right relationship with that probation officer, they can boom, back in prison. So for me, something really does need to be done along those lines. And I must admit, and I've been doing a lot of work with probation in this country through Revolving Doors Agency. I must admit, given the fact that I've had such a fractured relationship myself with probation, I'd like to think that it adds a little bit more to it. But I'm really hopeful about what probation, it's not going to be overnight. We've just reunified. They went through what was known as transforming rehabilitation. Absolute car crash it was. That was under Chris Grayling. Staff cut, absolutely ruined the prison system, ruined the criminal justice system. And I think we're just starting to pick up the pieces now. Not pick up the pieces, but just finished picking up the pieces, and we're turning the corner. I really do believe that in this country, in respect to the criminal justice system, no, it's not perfect. And some of the stuff that's being said isn't perfect either. But I really do believe that we're starting to turn a corner. And that in about three to 5 years' time, I think that we really will start seeing significant changes in respect of reducing reoffending, in respect of self-harm and suicide in prison. I think mental health is being understood slightly more by the judiciary themselves. Yeah, not so much. Yeah, I mean, it's understood by the prisons because the prisons deal with it every day. I think it's becoming more understandable by society, but in respect to the judiciary, they're slightly to one side of society, if you like. They're slightly detached. I'm not saying they live in a bubble as such, but they don't understand. And it's very easy. I mean, that's why we need to keep talking about poverty, because once people get comfortable, they forget about it. They seem to not be able to understand it more. Do you know what I mean? So with the judiciary, they don't really understand mental health. For them, I think for years, it's been a kind of get out card, if you like, a get out clause. But again, the judiciary in this country are very much starting to understand that mental health does play an extreme part in someone's criminal activity, and that they really need to start looking behind the crime. And if you do that, I've always said to people that when you, I mean, one of my roles in prison was with the listeners who are trained by the Samaritans. I think you have the Samaritans in America. So I was quite used to or versed in working with guys in prison who were trying to deal with their own issues at the time. You just get, apart from such a deep connection, you get such an understanding of yourself.
You get to know who you are.
Yeah, you do get to know who you are. And once you get to know who you are in that environment, you kind of get to see where things are going wrong, and where they can be improved. I'm not saying I've got all the answers and all the solutions. I'm not professing to have the...
does,
yeah, no, and I don't profess to be the voice of prison. Yeah, exactly. And yeah,
how you were going to move forward.
And as I say, it's really it's they're understanding more now. And I can't quite recall why I was brought the listener side of it into that conversation just then. I knew it was going somewhere, but that's the thing. It's things are improving. Through COVID, I think there's a lot of positives to be taken from such a drastic situation. And one of those positives, especially within the criminal justice system, has been the strengthening of the relationship between staff and people in prison, because it's had to.
Right.
It was either going to go one way. I mean, the people in prison and the staff in prison could not really rely on the government, the management, or society. They had to rely on each other, and they have done. I was very, very fearful at the start of the pandemic, at the start of lockdown in our prisons, that we were going to see a lot of disruption, a
Yeah.
lot of violent disruption,
People, when
riots.
they're
I'll say it.
afraid and get scared,
Yeah,
they act
yeah,
just
exactly. But I think we should be really proud of the way that people in prison, not just people in prison themselves, but staff in prison as well, have conducted themselves and have handled this situation. Because, as I say, it could have been handled better. Of course it could, but it could have been handled a lot worse.
that's true. So you're out, you've been out for a few years.
Yep.
What are you how was the transition for you this last time? Because I know you said that you went back, you didn't really know how to live your life, but you hit kind of rock bottom this last time, and you decided that you needed to live. You needed to make a
Yeah.
change.
Do you know, Brenda, that will, I think, was going to carry me through. However it was going to happen, that was going to carry me through. But when I got released, it wasn't easy. And you mentioned earlier about having support around you. I had an incredible support network around me when I got out. I was even made to get out of area or live out of area for a period of 6 weeks, because the crime I committed was the armed robbery I committed was within the area I was going back to. So they put me out of area first, and that was very difficult. And if it wasn't for the support network I had on the end of a phone, because they were miles away, because obviously they were where I was supposed to be, not where I got put. I think I would have ended up back in prison. On my last day there, at that particular hostel, on my last, it was like a halfway house, I think you
Right.
have in America. On my last day there, I received the director's warning. So I was a cigarette paper away from going back to prison. However, I knew once I got through that part that I was going to be fine. So when I got back, it was Norwich in East Anglia, which is in the east of England, about the middle of England, or the middle of the UK it is on the east. That's where I was. And I went back there. I was in another hostel. It was one I'd been to on two previous occasions, on two previous
So
sentences.
you were familiar.
And I was recalled on both occasions. As I said, I went back to prison on purpose. But that actually, ironically, helped me, because they were expecting someone else to turn up. And when this new guy turned up, they're like, hold on a minute, who's this geezer? So it was very easy for me to not have to try hard. I just was me. I was polite, and I did what I was told, and I stuck to the curfews and the conditions that was asked of me. I was supposed to have been there for 6 weeks, and I got out after 5. And then I moved on to what's known as supported accommodation. And I got a bit stuck there. Things were again quite difficult. And again, if it wasn't for support, who knows? But I'm at that point now in my life. I'm really comfortable. My partner Kelly, we live down in Kent, just outside London. Frankie the dog, Millie the cat, and the work I do is not work. I mean, it's passion. I absolutely love what I do, and that's utilizing my lived experience, as I say, through Revolving Doors Agency, and independently as well. I speak to organisations, and I go into
So
not
you're
so much.
making a difference.
Yeah, I go back into prisons and I do talks in prisons. Obviously, do podcasts, what can be is my kind of tagline, because that's what it's about. And it's about, for me, it's about meeting the individual need, which I did myself. I went through drug rehab this time. I've done a drug rehabilitation course in prison. And then I kind of done what I needed to do to I went on medication. So I managed to get myself to a point where my mind was rational. So then I could start focusing on improving me. So I fixed me, if you like. I got me balanced. And then I could look at kind of doing what I needed to do for out here. So that was for me. And then it was all about what I needed to do for my future. And I made a few mistakes. I'm not going to lie, in prison. I kind of slipped back a little bit, but that's what happens. That's why it's called a cycle of change, because it's a circle. It goes on continuously. It's not a straight line. So sometimes you do relapse and fall back, and I understand that, but I think sometimes it makes you even stronger when you do have a relapse, and you kind of learn more lessons. You learn new lessons.
Right.
I'm not saying to anyone to relapse. Don't. If you haven't
No,
relapsed,
you're not
please
given
don't.
an open ticket to do that.
Yes, no, it's
Saying
not.
you want to
Honestly,
learn
it's
from
not.
it.
It's not nice, because it can be very difficult to climb back out of once again. But as I say, I did. I did a couple of times, but I managed to climb back out of it through support as well.
How long have you been drug free?
Sorry,
How long have you been drug free?
with the kind of serious drugs, ever since 2015.
Good for you.
I've kind of cannabis now and again, I won't deny. But apart from, and I can drink now. I don't drink to get drunk. I don't drink for a crutch. And I mean, the cannabis, if I was in America, that's legal. So in most states, so it's not an issue. But as I say, it's not, but they're not issues. Do you know what I mean? They're just parts of life that happen now and again. Whereas the heroin, the crack, the speed, all of that side of it, that would suck me back down. That would take me back down. I'm not trying to justify what I do. I'm just saying what I do. It's fact. However, I've been out of prison over 4 years. I'm doing some incredible work through Revolving Doors Agency and independently, in respect of influencing change, not just in the system, but hopefully influencing change in the individual, because I had nothing. I come from nothing.
Right.
I've always been on the wrong side of the tracks, 40 years stuck in the criminal justice system, if you like. And here I am now. I'm also an international published author, with a story in Mitzi Zareto's book, Best New True Crimes. The book I was in, I think, was book 3. She's ever expanding series, and I was in book 3, which is Well-Mannered Crooks, Rogues and Criminals. But so, and then we have Pen and Corrections, which was the poetry book that I was involved in with 2 of my good mates, Ted and Ollie, where we worked with a couple of prisons and obviously people in prison, in producing haiku poetry through lockdown. And that started off really as just something me and Ted done, to give people in prison something to do. And because of the work that we received back, because of that talent that I know is in prison, and you know, Brenda, as well, the talent that's in prison, but the stuff that we were getting back was absolutely incredible. And we thought, look, we need to do something more with this. We can't just keep it to ourselves. So
There's a lot of talent with people in prison,
huge talent,
because they're
yeah,
still people.
yeah.
They still have a life, and they still have a value. And
Artists, sculptors,
push that
musicians,
aside.
singers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking about accountants and government officials and things
No.
like that. We're talking real people with real talent, and it's a talent we need. We need musicians, we need writers, we need poets, we need singers.
I wrote
We
my
need,
first book while I was incarcerated.
well, I mean, I was doing, I wrote, I had my first written submission published by our government, whilst I was still serving in prison.
And again, that's a mindset, because sometimes people get there and then they just give in. They give up and they
Yeah,
conform instead of my mindset was, I'm not going to let this be a waste of my time.
No, you can't fight the system.
Right.
You work within the parameters of the system, and look, you can still have little you still have little comforts if you like, if you're smart enough and play the game well enough. Um, but you can make prison as difficult, and I'm talking about the UK. I mean, I'm not talking about American, where you have silly
I think it's
sentences
the
like
same as far as what you make of it.
yeah, to us. I mean, if you're looking at 250 years before you have to do 125 years, I mean, I can't comprehend that. I mean, I'm speaking really about people that do 4 years and under.
Right.
Those have been my types of sentences over the years. So,
We just
um,
had a lot of them.
yeah, but for me, that there's enough time there. There's enough time there because you can't run away from yourself in prison.
No, you can't.
Um,
You have to face
it's
yourself.
Exactly, and and I've tried that many times in society. I've tried, and that's where I could get it wrong, or kept getting it wrong, because I kept trying to run away from myself. It's like, oh, I feel great now, but I'll just cut myself away from here, and I'll go over there, and I try this new thing, and I end up back in prison wherever it is that I'm now living. Do you know what I mean? So,
Right.
yeah, it really is about you as the individual, and once you start changing, one of the best things I read, Brenda, was Marcus Aurelius, and that was, we can only control our own mind, not outside events.
Right.
Realize this, and you'll find strength.
And that's in life
And
in general, not just prison.
well, of course, yeah. And one for me for prison was Muhammad Ali: "Make the days count, don't count the days." And even though I spent a long time in prison, I got it right for prison. I didn't waste my time in prison. I just wasted my time, I suppose, didn't utilize my time in prison to get it right out here. But
Right.
I never wasted my time. I always come out in prison more improved. I come out in one
As we
aspect
all should try to do,
better.
but some people
Yeah.
just don't.
No, and as I say, I mean, prison become the reward, because every time I went back, I had purpose, I had value, um, and I knew exactly what I needed to do,
Make the
and I
change.
set about doing it. Yeah, so I could survive prison quite easily. It was out here I couldn't live with.
And that's what I hear from a lot of people. They
Mm.
don't know how to adapt, especially if they've done a lot of time. That's
It's
the
that
thing.
thought process, it's that mindset. Again, it's not about adapting. It's the labels that we give ourselves, the labels that society give ourselves, the stigma, the
It almost makes you
discrimination,
feel worthless.
all of that. Yeah, of course. And once you start feeling worthless, what's the point?
Right.
What, and that's where you start making these decisions, or irrational decisions from. You're not making them from a platform of normality, of having a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, the wife, 2.2 children, the Labrador, free holidays a year, the condo in Florida. We're not talking about
No.
that, like, do you know what I mean? We're talking about a proper shit
It's
surviving
possible, but
life.
that's not what you need to be focusing on. You need to be
No,
focusing on
exactly.
yourself and your change.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the thing is, Brenda, the others will come.
They
Things
will.
will come.
Absolutely.
Get yourself right.
Yes.
And it ain't going to be easy.
No. You have to check yourself at the door and start evaluating inside before you can even start to focus on what's you may or may
And
not
once you
do.
do that, and for me, that obviously that process took part in prison, and a part of that process was giving back. And
Absolutely.
once I gave back, that process was expedited,
That's
because I
why I do
started,
what I do.
yeah,
I made a vow to some of the women that didn't necessarily have the education or the family support, um, or the lifestyle outside of what they knew to actually go out and make a difference. So I
mm,
try to educate the public on all aspects of incarceration, good,
yeah,
bad,
exactly.
anything that touches it, what happens to the families, what the attorneys even go through,
Mm.
because they're kind of stuck, and then you got to look at the prosecutors who everybody seems to hate. By the way, my prosecutor absolutely hated me, still hates me. I
Oh,
didn't know why, but I don't think you should take your job that personal. But the same sense, I don't hate him.
no,
He had a job to do. He did not look at my circumstances. He didn't look at me being pushed and backed into a corner and what was actually going on in my life, but that's okay. because I don't want to go back, but I'm very glad I went.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't want to go back, and to be honest, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy either. And I can empathise with you on that. I mean, I had a judge absolutely hated me, absolutely hated me. I nearly had a party myself when he retired. Yeah, I mean, I didn't get on with him. I had quite a few battles with him in the courtroom, and because the kind of more I kind of got better in prison, the more I educated myself around law. And there's nothing worse than having a judge that don't like you, having my attitude that stank at the time.
And that
So
matters.
yeah, of course, because you walk in there with an attitude, you start telling the judge his job from some upstart criminal, they don't like it. And the thing is, it's their keys. They've got the keys. So you need to be very careful about your
You do.
attitude.
But, you know, I
Yeah.
do think that our judicial systems, and I'm not sure how it is in your country, but in our country, the prosecutor and the judges hold all the power. And I'm not sure that one individual should have that kind of power. So they say, well, we don't because you have the right to a jury trial. Okay, so now you're in the hands of 12 others. But that prosecutor and that judge still can put you in prison while you're
Uh,
going through trial. They can set the stage so it's either for you or against you. But at the same time, they also can manipulate those jurors.
mm,
And it's just sad. And then not only can they manipulate the jurors, and I'm not saying they do, not all of them do, but they penalize you for taking it to trial, even though
mm.
it's your right. So if you lose at trial, you're going to get more time than what you would have if you would have just took a plea.
I think, yeah, and I think it's what is the American rate? 95% a plea bargain, don't they?
Yes,
Only
but you know,
5% go to trial.
right. And
It's
they consider that a win. It's still a win
yeah.
because they're still sending you to prison. So when people say, what's a 95% win rate for the prosecutor for the judicial system? No, it's really not for trial.
Mm,
It's considered a win because you took a plea.
mm. So if 50% of those in the criminal justice system in America went not guilty, the criminal justice system in America would collapse.
That is true. And, you know, there's a lot of people that plead guilty just to get it over with. And there's
Mm.
some, you know, especially with the women,
With so many charges.
yes,
It's like,
they
look,
charge
we've
me.
arrested you. You're in the
Yes.
police station. You are going to get guilty for one of these offences.
Well, that's what
Pick one.
happened to me. They charged me with 26 charges. Went in
Wow.
with 10, they superseded the indictment, came at me with 26 charges, wanted me to do 30 years, and I walked out with 3. I mean, it's just
Wow.
absolutely ridiculous what they do.
And what gets me, Brenda, and as much as all of that does need improving and does need change, what for me really does frustrate me and makes me angry about the American criminal justice system is the length of time it takes to
Yeah,
change something in
yeah,
respect of a wrongful conviction,
right, and I saw.
especially when the evidence is slapping you in the
Yes, because
face.
it's all about their career. It's all about the
Exactly.
career of the prosecutor because they wanna become judges. You don't see a lot of defense
Yep.
attorneys sitting the bench. And
No.
the other thing that I've seen is, like, especially with women, is their husband or their boyfriend or their family member might have been involved with drugs, and they in the American justice system, all of a sudden now it's a conspiracy against you, which
Mm,
carries 5 years. You may or may not have known what that person was really doing.
mm,
And even if you did, you might not have participated in it, but you're
mm,
still gonna get some time because of it, and they end up pleading because they scare you to death.
mm,
And I didn't have little children at home, so mine was not for drugs, but I just fought my case. My kids were
mm.
grown, my family supported me, and they said, "Fight, fight for what you're gonna do." And the other thing that I've seen is they will attack your family to try to separate you from them. So now you don't have that support. So you plead out to
Mm.
stop them from coming after your family, even though you may or may not be guilty.
Yeah, I mean, my hobby is the history of organized crime and the FBI. I mean, to kind of, I said not infiltrate, but to break up the American mafia, they would go after the families. and they would try and get stuff on the families so that they could then go back to the mafia guys and get them to flip. And you sometimes look at law enforcement in America and you look at the mafia and you think, which one's the one that's on the wrong side?
I agree with that.
I mean, it's getting better. Don't get me wrong, it is getting better. But yeah, I mean, your law enforcement over there is a lot to be desired, that's for sure. and I don't mean individuals. Of course, it's, again, we're coming down to individuals. It's the system, it's the policies, it's the people at the top that make the decisions, the ones that you don't get to see, the ones that aren't at the coalface. But yet, the ones at the coalface, you do get some that kind of take the job too seriously, take the uniform too seriously, take their role too seriously in protecting, I suppose, the public, if you like. But in the main, probation officers, correctional officers, you can have all the best policies, the best management in the world, but it comes down to individuals. And I think a lot of some of these individuals should be being picked up at the interview stage, because they are that anti. I mean, it's like, mate, what are you doing? And you hate prisoners and you're a prison officer. Please explain to me why you are in this job. You are hated. You come to work. You must look over your shoulder every single day.
Because they like the
power. You hate prisoners. Exactly.
Like the power.
Well, yeah, I mean, Zimbardo's prison experiment, Stanford experiment, goes to show how quickly that can change as well. How quickly you can go into a prison system with the right reasons, but given the right set of circumstances, that power, that uniform, that just, and it works both ways. The prisoner can also exert that power and influence over the correctional officer. So it's
even over other people that are incarcerated.
Yeah, of course.
There's gangs, there's a level of status that you have in there.
I mean, there's so many variables, Brenda, aren't there? There's so many variables. There's so many things going on at one moment in prison. And yet 90% of the time it's boring. That's what people don't understand. All of the stuff that goes on in about 10% of the prison time. The other 90%, you're laying on your bunk or you whatever. But and because it seems so more enhanced and just boom.
People ask me all the time, is it like it is in the movies? And I said, no. I mean, yes, it can be, but in the movie, it seems like it's always going on because,
well, it has to. I mean,
2 hours, right? But in reality, those fights and the things that you see that happen, happen every couple months. There's not a daily.
No, exactly. And people getting cut up and things like. I mean, obviously, I'm not aware what it's like in the supermarket. Well, I do because they can't get to anybody because they're not moving anywhere.
Right,
they're all
in their
signal,
own
six-man unlock. I mean, it's but as I say, I mean, I mentioned it earlier, and I've noticed in America as well that you've recently hit your lowest figures for incarceration figures for, I think, 10 years, is it? The lowest for 10 years. So obviously COVID played a huge part in that, but that's why we need to take advantage. We don't need to go backwards. It's time to go forwards. Let's kind of draw the line on what was, and let's use this opportunity now to really start to influence change. And let's be honest, it's to everyone's benefit. If we have a criminal justice system that is justice for all, and that's the people that are trapped within it as well as victims, if we have a criminal justice system fit for purpose, it will benefit everybody because it will cut back on crime. It will cut back on
a lot of people that need just probation. They don't necessarily.
Exactly. I mean, we get people sent to prison for days. That's useless, absolutely pointless.
I have seen people go to prison on just a criminal complaint. They're sitting in a holding facility or in a jail, and they haven't even been charged yet. It's just a criminal complaint.
Why?
They take them away from society because they're a danger to the community.
You really can free up 50% of the prison system just by utilizing what's available in the community.
Right.
I mean, prisons are there to protect the public.
They are,
They're
but let's
there,
face it, some of these people are coming back out and they're going to be part of the community. They're going to be sitting right next to you in your
neighbors.
job, in your
Yeah,
house, in your neighborhood, in your church. You are going to come face to face with somebody that's done time somewhere
exactly.
along your life. And let's face it, a lot of us already have a family member that has,
Yeah,
even if you're that person.
yep.
So I think we need to change our perception because we are still people that made a mistake
Hmm.
and are trying to do better. And I think that second chances should be given.
Yeah, and let's start understanding the causes of crime once more.
Right.
I think we were making moves a few years back to start looking at the causes of crime, but for some reason we went back to just pure punishment, I suppose.
Yeah.
Again, the prisons are improving, and they're improving quite a fast rate, but there are also potential for them to go back to what they were.
Right.
There's a prison officers association we have here, the prison officers union. Um, Quite clearly, there's been less assaults on staff and there's been less assaults on prisoners because everyone's been behind the door. So there
Right.
hasn't been that opportunity. But I also like to think that a lot of that is because of the relationship that's now built up. So if the POA had their way, everyone would stay behind the door.
Right.
If 23 hours a day getting fed underneath the door, that is what the POA seemed to want. But we can't go back to what was either.
Right.
Which was so they need to understand that it's easier to manage prisons in smaller numbers. So rather than have a prison with a maximum of 1,000 prisoners,
And I,
let's have units
yes, and I
of,
also
of,
think
of
that
20, 30, 40 prisoners.
right, because it's easier to manage in smaller groups. But I also think it depends on the warden, the
Yeah,
person
of
who's
course.
running the prison, because your officers will take on that mentality, those actions of whatever that warden is carrying.
Yeah, a culture. It's the warden that
Yes,
creates the
there you
culture.
go.
There's a culture of prison that's been around for centuries. Of course, there has, and that's that culture that kind of just runs. I mean, there's a culture in society, of course there is,
Right.
but then there's an extra culture. There's an added culture, of course. I don't know if you spoke to or know who DJ Vodka is.
Yeah, I've
Um,
actually interviewed him.
oh,
Yeah.
have you? DJ, yeah, I've
Yes.
again,
The
I've got
green wall.
DJ's book, The Green
Right.
Wall. So
Mhm.
there you go. That's
And I saw some of that, not with the
yeah.
green wall. It wasn't in the women's area, but I saw guards with that mentality, and you
Well,
just knew you didn't mess with them.
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, you
it's
didn't even
like
speak to them because if they didn't like you for any reason, your cell was going to get tossed, your things were going to get thrown away, things might even get planted for you to go to solitary
mm,
confinement. And it doesn't matter what you say because the staff, even though you get to have a hearing, is usually 90% of the time, 99% of the time, is going to side with that correctional officer.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I remember once I was in Crown Court. It was a jury trial, and we were basically up against the police. There was a lot of violence against the police, and uh, my barrister said to me, he said, "Look," he said, "I don't mind you going in the dock." He said, "As long as you can guarantee me that you can convince 12 members of the public that the police are liars." He went, "Good luck with that." He said,
Yeah.
he said, "I'll back you all the way if you can." And I went, "Yeah, good point."
And sometimes it is a losing battle. And
Yeah, it is.
when they're going up against a grand jury to indict you, they are not supposed to really sway them. Okay,
Mm,
so and you don't know what's being said until you are indicted, and then you get to see your discovery and you get to see what happened actually with the grand jury.
mhm.
What evidence was presented. But if there's something good about that person, that prosecutor is supposed to tell the grand jury that too, but they don't do that. And it's all so closed. And most of the
Bad.
people who are fighting for their case, who are seeing this discovery, they don't know how because they're not educated. They don't
Mm,
know the law and they're scared to death. So they start taking the advice of an attorney who may or may not like you, who may or may not be working hard for you, who may or may not even care. They just want to
mm.
move you off their docket so they can move on to the next person. And some attorneys are like that, some attorneys aren't. I had a public defender that was awesome. She was absolutely wonderful. I had a paid attorney that I fired because he was horrible. absolutely horrible. But I've seen both sides of it.
Mm.
And my attorney, that once she started believing that I wasn't crazy, she actually thought I was crazy. She brought in a psychiatrist to evaluate me while I was in a holding facility. And I think she thought that if I was crazy, it might have helped my case. And the lady said, there's nothing wrong with her. Maybe, hear her out. So I started telling her my story, and she actually fell asleep on me while in the room while I was talking. And I instead of getting upset with her, because she was a very good attorney, my judge really gave me a great public defender. I had to realize that she's got a lot of windshield time. She's in the car all the time. She's getting up at the crack of dawn. She's got all these cases. Not only was she just a public defender, she was in over the entire state of Kansas. So she had everybody else that worked for her, that she had to make sure they were doing their job. So I just realized, cut her a break, help her out. So I started looking for things within my own case that I could maybe help with or not help with. Sometimes it's probably a hindrance to her. But we came to the realization that my prosecuting attorney was listening to my phone calls with my attorney. And I was supposed to be doing 72 months. I got out in 44 because of that. Mhm. So the just just because they're a prosecutor or a judge does not mean that they are following the law themselves.
No, and yeah, and sometimes they kind of fly very close to the interpretation of the
They
law as
do.
well, don't they?
They
I
can.
mean, we have the same thing here with disclosure, disclosure. I think it's the
Right.
same
Same
thing, that
thing.
where you get the prosecution pack. And I mean, me personally, I would always either go no plea or not guilty and wait until I got the disclosure pack.
You have to, because
Because
you don't know what they
yeah,
have.
exactly. And sometimes you'll find stuff in, if you're fortunate, you'll find stuff in there that will basically technically mean you're not guilty,
Right.
regardless of whether you've done it or not.
Right. But
It's
a lot of
playing the
people don't
game.
take the time to look at the discovery, and here's why. In
Yeah.
America, the attorneys have to bring that discovery with them and then go over it with you. Well, they don't have that kind of time. I was
No.
one of the first people in the state of Kansas in a federal holding
And they
facility.
hide it.
They do, but they gave me a computer that I could go to the legal platform to look at this stuff, and I could look at all my discovery on the computer without my attorney being there. And I could take notes and I could say, can we go back over this? So she didn't have to have all that time inside the jail with me. And I think if they
Mm.
could do that with a lot more prisoners, I think it would help out both the time frame, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. And then the prosecutors take forever to get the discovery to
Yeah.
the defending attorney. So they just don't care. Everything just keeps getting extended and extended and extended. And before you know it, you've done your time before you're going to walk out with time served, because it took 4 years just to get through the discovery and all the extensions.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And
It's,
and it's as if they produce as much paperwork as possible as
they
well
do.
to try and
It's
confuse the
scary.
situation,
That's right. Because
or they
most people
use
do not
certain
have the
words
education to go through it.
or they use certain words that will kind of mean one thing and you miss it in the disclosure.
Right.
And then when it comes up in court, it's just, yeah, I mean, it is, um, it's fair's fair. Do you
Yes.
know what I mean?
You
It's a
don't.
fair cop kind of thing, just, but it is the innocent until proven guilty.
Well,
Is it
that doesn't exist.
really?
It is, you are guilty until proven innocent.
Of
I'm here to
course.
tell you
And
it
it's
is.
been that, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And it's been that way
I
for
had
years.
a
And
I had my attorney, the good one, not the bad one. The bad one wouldn't even take my calls, even though I paid for them. This lady, all of their witnesses that they were trying to bring against me, she actually went and looked into their past. And there were statements that said that this person was dishonest, so they wouldn't be a good witness, from previous employers, even. So by the time we would have went and they would have had a lot of those people come in to testify against me, she already had facts to discredit them. And a lot of attorneys won't go to that point. They won't
mm,
search and find the bad in the others too. So, yeah, she came to me. She said, you were kind of involved with a lot of bad people." And I said, "Yeah, I didn't realize that until after the fact." So, if you got one that's working for you, good. I hope you probably had many attorneys.
to be honest, Brenda, I was more. interested in having or barrister, as we call them here.
Right.
I was more interested in having a barrister that was pretty good at mitigating, because 9 times, well, I was always banged to rights. I was
That's
fortunate.
important too, to get the best deal you can.
Yeah, I mean, if you've done it, it's about damage limitations. You don't have to go running in going, all right, it was me, it was me, it was me. Because as I
Right.
say, you got disclosure. There could have been a mistake, as long as you know what you're looking for.
Right.
Unfortunately, I haven't had that.
But
But
you're admitting.
yeah, but also you also get the opportunity of what you're, as you said, you get to know what you're working with, and you kind of, you get an understanding yourself. So then you can start doing plea bargains yourself. You can say, well, look, I've gone through the paperwork. I think that's a bit harsh, isn't it? How about I'll go guilty if, or I'll do this if.
Right.
So, I mean, I've been involved in a lot of those, only based on the info, not snitching. I haven't got any time off or anything like that.
Right.
Never been accused of or anything suspicious of anything like that at all.
No, you
But
can't, because that gets you into trouble later. Or
yeah, of course. But it's always been about, I mean, my last crime, it kind of worked too well to my advantage, because what I'd done was gone guilty at a certain point. I was hoping to get 5 years. The starting point of my crime was 7 years for the armed robbery. It was at knife point. But because I'd gone guilty at a certain point, the judge said to me that he appreciated the fact that I'd gone guilty, because it didn't put the victims through any more
right. And you have to think about it
stress.
too.
Yeah, of course. And I'm not saying that I didn't use that to my advantage. Of course I did. You got, I mean, it's no different to them. They take advantage, the prosecution side take advantage of situations. On the defense side, you've got to take advantage of situations. And that was a situation I took advantage of. And as I say, it kind of done it too well, because rather than start at 7 years and give me 5, he started at 5 and give me 3 years, 9 months. So
Very cool.
I done it so well, because I know.
And I've seen that happen time and time again. I've seen it happen where people who should have got a lot of time don't, and people who shouldn't have really got a lot of time got a lot of time. It
Yeah,
really goes back and forth.
it's a game.
It is a game. It is a
If
game,
you've done it, I mean, and as I say, I mean,
but it shouldn't be a game.
no, it
But
shouldn't.
but
But
it is.
yeah, I
I
mean,
wrote I wrote this book behind me, Restitution, while I was incarcerated. It didn't get published until I was out, but I even got questioned by the security staff about that book, because somebody told on me that I was writing a book about prison life. It wasn't even about that. It is a fiction novel about a female serial killer. And so when they asked me, "Where is this book?" I said, "It's at home. I send it home every time I get a couple pages home. I send it home." I said, "If writing a book is a crime, then why aren't the jails full of authors?"
well, they're very paranoid, aren't they? They're very
Yes, very
paranoid about what
paranoid.
you're going to
Yes,
say about them. I mean, and
exactly.
that's something else with the for profit prison system. I mean, I done an expose a couple of years back on Core Civic,
Yes, and that's where I was
and
at with Core Civic. Yes.
yeah, and it's how as well that they kind of go to areas where there's a kind of smallish prison, 200, 300 maximum capacity. You got a small town with population of 1,500, 2,000. All of a sudden, the population of the prison overtakes the population of the town.
Right.
The prison are employing everybody from the town, so
Mhm.
no one
Like
speaks
the
up.
prison community.
Yeah,
Right.
it's safety in numbers, isn't it? And the prison system, the
And they are
BOP or
huge.
court,
Yeah.
yeah, of course they are. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, when they were CCA before they changed their
Right.
name,
See, I went
they
in while
were
they were CCA, and I was there during the name change, and I'm telling you, the
didn't
organization is
change
terrible.
anything.
No, they just exactly. That's why it was called CCA, corporate,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, they were
Core Civic.
lobbying.
It was,
They were lobbying, weren't they? They were spending absolute millions on lobbying for longer sentences and more crimes
I
to
actually
be
had a prison
mandated.
guard tell me that all people in prison were worthless, that she had never committed a crime in her life. And her dad also worked there. and he was in R&D, which is receiving and discharge. So when you came in, he was over all of that, and he would, you know, if you went out for medical or whatever, he was over that. And he refused to talk to an inmate. If you talk to him, he'd look at another guard and say, "Tell them I don't talk to inmates." That
You
was the
did know,
mentality of the core civic employee. Hmm.
you did know prison officers or correctional officers who didn't like you.
Right.
You knew the ones that loved the job.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
for me, I mean, sometimes it was impossible. I used to stay out of the way.
You have to.
There were plenty of other prison officers, decent prison officers, that I could go and speak to get something done.
Yes,
If I
I was
needed
very
something
fortunate to have
doing,
a lot of good ones.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, you get a couple as well that end up doing everything for the whole prison.
Right.
They start getting a reputation because they're really good at what they do. We had one officer at HMP Norwich who was very good at getting your telephone numbers put on your pin phone. And so, I mean, I used to, she'd go on holiday for 2 weeks and I'd keep anything I'd want done until she got back, because
Right.
they'd be done rather than
Right.
giving them to someone else I knew weren't going
And
to
that's
do
the
them.
way it is here with our unit team is the one who would be in charge of all that. And we have
Mm,
unit team that they are horrible. They don't, and
mm.
it's not really that they don't care or that the person is horrible. They are so busy because they can't find staff. And there's so many things that they have them doing that they can't control the unit.
And the problem is as well, Brenda, that all of these, obviously, unless people are involved themselves within the criminal justice system, they probably think, um, we might be biased towards prison officers, because of what they see on all of these documentaries and these programs. But unfortunately, they don't really. I mean, you're not going to see a prison officer in their true light on a TV documentary
Of course
unless they've gone in undercover.
not. Exactly. Because for one, they might lose their job.
Exactly.
Two, if you're involved in a gang like the Green Wall, they're going to come after you. I mean,
Yeah,
look at DJ and the things that he's living just because he spoke up. You know, he didn't
exactly.
go into hiding, and it's real. It
Well,
is.
he's virtually in the witness protection
Yeah.
program, which was designed for snitches against the mafia,
Right.
who were a ruthless, murdering organization. Let's be
But
honest.
something needed to be said, and I commend
Yeah.
him for
Oh,
saying
I do. I love DJ. I've spoken to DJ quite a few times. We stay in contact. I've read his book.
yeah.
He signed it personally and sent it over from America. We've been on podcasts together as well,
Right.
me and DJ. So, yeah, I've got a lot of time for DJ. And when you've got, I mean, he an inspiration, because this, obviously your listeners are aware, but for people that get to hear about DJ for the first time, is he went to the state senate
Hmm.
to influence them to change the policy so that he could get his story out there.
Right.
I mean, that is incredible.
It is.
He got the government to change policy so
Mhm.
that he could get, or the Supreme Court to
Because
go
one
against the
person can
government.
make a difference. And I,
Yeah,
for those of you listening, one person can make a difference. People say, "I'm just one person. What can I do?" You can make a difference.
drop a stone in a pond and watch what happens with the
That's,
ripples.
that's
It's
right.
one stone, but many ripples, and they go far and wide.
Many, many, and is if you
Exactly,
do a
but it
lot
all
of those
starts with
things, that's right.
one pebble, one
And that's
person.
why I do what I do. I'm hoping I
Yeah.
had somebody on Facebook tell me I was looking for prison stories, and she said, "I commend what you're doing. However, my experience is not for free."
Mm.
Okay, well, move on. I mean, I'm not going to pay you to do an interview, but if we don't speak up, how are we ever going
Exactly.
to change anything? So
Yeah.
you went through your experience. You want to be paid to speak. Great. That's all for you. I'm for whatever you want to do. But at the same time, nothing's going to change if people don't
No.
speak up.
Or you get accused of trauma tourism.
Yes.
Um, but it's like, well, hold on a minute. How can we highlight these issues? You, if it's it's like wanting to. I don't want to be other people's voices, but what I want to do is every time I got the opportunity, I want to be able to say the things that people that want to say those things but can't.
Yes. And really the same things that you experienced, so did they.
Yeah, to
So did
some
they.
extent. Yeah,
Yeah. And people need
yeah,
to be heard.
yeah.
And just like with
People's
you, you're trying to make a difference there where you live. You're trying to show people that you have changed. Just
Mm.
like you said, you used to be against probation. Now you're, you see both sides of it.
Yeah.
But you're also trying to make a difference not only in your own life, but for others who have been through what you've been through. And if I can help just one, then that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah, and you don't know how many that. I mean, it could have again the ripple effect. You help one, they're going to help one. They're
Right.
going to help two. They're going to help three. They're going to help six. All of a sudden, from one person, 2,500, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people have been helped because of that knock-on effect, that paying it forward aspect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you run into those ones who will go out and be dynamite for you.
Mm,
They just needed that little spark to get them
yep,
ignited. And when you find a
they're the
person like
ones.
that, yes,
They're the
then
ones that keep you going.
they're the ones
They,
keep it going.
you
Mhm.
only need for kind of, I suppose, not failures, but for every 99 uh, hard work, if you like, that one that sparks is just worth it. Just, and I've seen it so many times. I've been involved in so many people's journeys in that aspect that I've seen them not be able to read, not be able to write, studying for level 2. Not being able to speak to anybody and
Yeah.
working on the surgery, working on the food.
Right.
Just it's just individual successes. It's not about people coming out with 37 degrees or coming out with £3.5 million in the bank account because they're
That's what
this,
it's
they're
not.
that. No, it's about having that just subjectively happy and subjectively successful. Some days getting out of bed success for me.
Reality, to get the degree, it costs money. It's not,
Yep.
everything in there is not free. You might be able to get your GED, which here is a high school equivalent
Hmm.
diploma. But to get your master's degree, or your 4-year degree, or your PhD, that just doesn't happen
Mm.
like people think it does, and it's not free. I was part of a program to where I have a biology degree. I have a BS in biology, so I was going to work on my master's, and
Right.
it wasn't free.
Mm.
I still had to pay a monthly fee. I'm currently still working on it. And when I got out, that fee went up.
Yeah, my degree,
Mhm.
I took out a student loan, and obviously the paying back is a decent deal, but I still put
It wasn't
myself
free.
in debt. No, I
Right.
put myself in debt in prison to better myself.
Yes, and I'm not saying you shouldn't go after the degree.
No, no, no.
Absolutely
Yeah,
you should, yes. But
yeah, no,
it's not free.
exactly.
To the people who think everything in jail, everything in prison is free, that
A
is
good,
not true.
yeah, a good education available to everybody should be available in prison. But yeah, if you want to better yourself and you want to take yourself further, then damn right you should pay for it.
I agree. Yeah,
But the basics, what everyone's entitled to, no, that is what the prison should be providing.
right.
Everyone,
Mhm.
no one should leave school without the basics, let's be honest.
Right.
But
But we do.
when we get a second opportunity, when we get a second chance, no one should be leaving our prisons without the ability to read or write, without the ability to be who they want to be, and without the skills and abilities or the skills and experience, the skills and knowledge, the wisdom, whatever, to be able to live a life and not survive life.
Right. Well, we probably need to cut this off. Don't hang up when I stop the recording, because I've got something I want to send over to you. But
No,
what
it's
would you tell people that what could you tell the public about what you're going through right now?
what I'm going through right now.
Hmm.
In respect of what, Brenda? Sorry.
Well, you've done a lot of time. You've
Yep.
made changes in your life. You're doing a job that you love. What does that feel like? What are you going through
Oh,
now?
it's incredible. Do you know, to have a purpose and feel valued and loved and wanted, which I know I do. So that's kind of taken care of, and
Mhm.
that's quite important.
It is
Um,
important.
and to feel supported, um, but to have a purpose, to be working towards something that I wanted to be working towards, to do what I want to do, but to love what I do. It's effort becomes effortless.
Right.
Um, um, I don't have money's no longer important.
Hmm.
There's things in my life that are more important, but there's also things in my life that are not important. Um, don't sweat the small stuff, sort of thing.
Right.
And because of that, the 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 shit times, excuse my French, but
Okay.
even though it's English, but the bad times are easier. It doesn't stop the bad times. It doesn't mean to say that you're not going to wake up in the morning and just, oh, I can't be bothered today. I've just not nothing in me. It doesn't mean that's going to replace that. It doesn't mean to say that I'm not going to be standing at the sink washing the dishes and all of a sudden start crying. That's not going to stop. But because of the good stuff that's going on, because of the positive stuff, it makes those parts easier to deal with.
Absolutely. Good. For those of you who would like to learn more about David, give me a ring. You can call me, look me up on social media. Everything's at Brenda Ringwood, and I'll be happy to see if I can put you in touch with him. If you have a story that you'd like to share, get in touch with me. We want to get your story out there. And again, thanks for watching. I know this one went a little long, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. And if you need anything, if you need a shoulder to cry on, if you need to talk about you know your life, if you've just come out of being incarcerated and you're struggling, give us a call. We want to talk to you. We want to make sure that your life is going smoothly, because you do have a value, you have a worth, and you are a person.